In Georgia, ooh, things aren't going so good for Donnie.
You're watching the legal breakdown. So, Glenn, there is an ongoing investigation in Fulton County, Georgia, and that's regarding Trump's call with Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger.
Quick background, that's Brian Tyler Cohen and Glenn Kirshner. Glenn Kirshner is a legal expert. Brian Tyler Cohen is a handsome man. And together, they do the legal breakdown.
Demanding that he find 11,780 votes that didn't exist. Now, a special grand jury was convened, and that grand jury has now completed its report. So first, why was a special grand jury convened? And second, what comes next now that that report's complete?
I do want to say I am so glad that he's asking that question right off the bat. I really have trouble following the let me put myself in the middle here. I have trouble following the Georgia's rules for how the grand juries work. So I think Glenn Kirshner does a pretty good job of summing it up. But if I stutter a lot coming up, it's because I'm trying to work it out myself. Well, there we go.
Yeah, the good news is this feels like progress. So Georgia has a somewhat unusual dual grand jury system. Usually jurisdictions just have one grand jury. That grand jury issues subpoenas, hears testimony, and votes out indictments. In Georgia, the regular grand jury cannot compel witnesses to testify. The regular grand jury doesn't have subpoena power. So you have to ask the court to convene a special grand jury to exercise the subpoena power to force or compel reluctant witnesses to testify. And boy, did District Attorney Fani Willis have her hands full with lots of reluctant witnesses, Donald Trump's, lackeys and lapdogs who didn't want to testify. So that's why she had to seek to have a judge impanel the special grand jury. And now, as you say, that grand jury has completed its work. It's issued a report and it's been resolved. And now they move on to next steps.
So when are we going to find out who the Fulton County DA was trying to get to compel to testify?
This is going to be very interesting because what I want to hear is folks involved in the fake elector plot. I understand that they're all the focus of the, oh my gosh, what a state we're in. The focus of the Georgia election interference investigation is on the pressure to Raffensperger. The pressure to try to get the, 11,780 votes, that phone call, and the events surrounding it. But I also want to hear about the fake electors, and I really hope to hear that got mentioned in the grand jury.
So there is an open question right now about whether the special grand jury's report will become public. And I'll talk about that in a second. But I think it's really interesting that District Attorney Willis has been sort of persistently sawing the justice wood and defeating Donald Trump loyalists one after another. And this is why she needed the special grand jury, because she subpoenaed Mike Flynn, who desperately didn't want to have to testify before a Georgia state grand jury about the crimes of Donald Trump. So,
pure speculation. Mike Flynn, I think Trump wanted to be his general. He went out of his way to ensure that Mike Flynn did not get in trouble for the real shady dealings he had with Russia. I would suspect that there is more to that story, but every time you hear Mike Flynn's name in the news, your ears ought to perk up.
Of course, he went to court. He tried to avoid testifying, and boy, Fani Willis just beat the pants off him. He appeared and he testified. Rudy Giuliani, same thing. He didn't want to have to testify about Donald Trump's crimes, went to court. Fani Willis beat him and he appeared and testified. And Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham, so desperately didn't want to have to testify before the Georgia state grand jury about Donald Trump's crimes that he fought it all the way up to the Supreme Court, and District Attorney Willis beat him and he had to appear before the grand jury and testify. So now what happens is this is all secret by law. So the special grand jury has issued a report. Fani Willis has it. And there's a court hearing in Georgia. The case is being presided over, or I should say the grand jury matter is being presided over by Judge McBurney, a Georgia state judge. And on January 24th, he's going to hear arguments on whether the grand jury's report should become public or should remain secret while Fani Willis moves on to the next phase of her investigation. Here's what the next phase looks like. She will take the work of the special grand jury and she will present it to the regular grand jury in Georgia. That is the grand jury empowered to indict people. And I have to believe, Brian, if we read the tea leaves, I suspect the special grand jury found evidence of crime. How could they not, given that notorious phone call? Look, just find me 11,780 votes and corruptly declare me the winner. Let me add that
Before he adds, let me add. That played on national television. It's insane. It is insane that it took a state's attorney general to start a case into this. It's insane that it's 2023 and we're just getting real progress on this. I understand investigations take time. The Department of Justice better understand that this dude, this whole case, of which they had 2 years to build and get an indictment, one, the evidence played on national television. Two, it involves elector fraud. It involves trying to undo democracy. And guess what? We had an election after that. 2022. We had an election. The people involved in this would have been affected in their election if indictments had been made. I understand that you cannot use the Justice Department as a way to get rid of political opponents you don't like. But you also can't fail to use it just because you're afraid that somebody who is constantly accusing you of all kinds of wildness will also accuse you of using the Justice Department as a cudgel. In other words, MAGA people are going to say that anybody who isn't, full-on fascist is a rhino or a socialist or whatever. And they'll have no idea what they're talking about. And they know it, and we know it, and on it goes. The fact that we have politicians and attorneys general that are worried about their opinion is insane. Their opinion isn't an honest one. And the real consequences we're suffering is that there are people within our government right now who might get arrested tomorrow because we didn't have the guts to take care of this a year ago, 2 years ago. This is an open and shut case, and that's just with the evidence that played on national television. That is just with Trump, with what Trump has already admitted to. That is just with what we know. Imagine what we don't know yet. Those transcripts are going to be fascinating. Let's let Glenn Kirschner do his thing. Go on, brother.
Other participant in that call, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger from Georgia, he testified before the special grand jury about that phone call. So if the special grand jury has recommended in its report that criminal charges should be brought against one or more people, I have to believe Fani Willis will go into the regular grand jury, will present that report, will summarize the evidence that was developed before the special grand jury, and she will ask the regular Georgia grand jury to vote out indictments.
Now, we know that special grand jury's report isn't public, but what about the regular grand jury that's been convened? Are we gonna be able to follow along with that publicly?
It will all be done behind closed doors in secret. The only thing we will know is when and if an indictment has been issued and unsealed. that is typically at the moment an arrest is made or a negotiated turn-in is agreed to between the prosecutors and the defense attorneys representing the target, indeed, if the target ends up being Donald Trump. So the answer is no, unfortunately. We're going to be kept in the dark unless and until an indictment issues.
Is that normal? Like, are all grand jury cases, at least in the state of
That's a good
Georgia,
question.
behind closed doors? Isn't this something that usually we're able to follow along with, at least in other states?
Almost all grand juries are secret by law because, and there are really some important policy considerations behind that. If we prosecutors are in the grand jury investigating somebody for potential crime, and it turns out we don't have enough evidence to indict the person, or maybe we got it wrong, the person didn't commit a crime, the last thing you want to do is to have that information out in the public square because, the person who might be wrongfully accused can never get his or her reputation back. We also do it, Brian, to protect the witnesses that we call before the grand jury, because we want them to feel comfortable that they can fully testify about the crimes of others.
Don't forget, just like any, let's get out
Without
that dumb face. There we go. Just like with any other criminal organization, Trump's people, the Trump family, hasn't been afraid to intimidate witnesses. As a matter of fact, we had the whole drama with that playing out with Cassidy Hutchinson. I mean, Trump intimidates in a sort of childish, cartoonish way even. But he did that on the phone call with Brad Raffensperger. Remember that he said, what you're doing it could be illegal to not look into it. As in, if I somehow make it through this thing, I'm going to make sure you hurt for not helping me. So he's got a good point about why it's kept secret. I understand that. That said, I am getting impatient, as should you, and extraordinarily grateful to Fani Willis for her incredible efforts. She has been truly one of the heroes of this generation. She is one of the people who has acknowledged finally that America has a corrupt justice system and has actually taken steps to do something about it. It's amazing. I also have to give credit. Dana Nessel, who I had come out against specifically for not doing this. Dana Nessel reopened the investigation into Donald Trump in the state of Michigan, into the fake electors plot in the state of Michigan. There were 7 states where that happened. One of them's Georgia, another one's Michigan. There's 5 more that could have state investigations opened into Trump's interference with the election. Let's get to it. Also recall that if the federal investigation is the only one that is done into the fake elector plot, if it's even done at all, we honestly don't know if they're still doing that. But if it's done at all, it's unlikely they're going to focus or give much weight to a lot of the state-level people. Well, the current lieutenant governor of Georgia is one of those state-level people. So it does have consequences in your state. Look at that link in the description. See if you're from one of the states that had a fake elector plot. If you are, contact your attorney general. Dana Nessel cited pressure from her constituents in terms of what was one of the things that made her reopen the case. It does work. It doesn't take that much effort, but it does take some effort. Let's read some comments here. I just want to say hello to all of you. Thank you so much for joining me. Christopher Andrews says, content with substance. Man, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Mr. Saxokeet says, appreciate the content, brother. Keep it up. You know I will. Absolutely. This is incredibly fun. Thank you for joining me on a Saturday night. It's all right for fighting for what you believe in. This has been WYCD Wicked. It's your old pal Jake. We're looking to get to 1,000 subscribers. If you enjoyed today. If you enjoyed previous streams, if you'd like more, consider giving this stream a like and the channel a subscribe. I'd highly appreciate it. We share good progressive content from around the internet, from around the world, and we tell you what you can do. I'll see you next time.